The modern world can be a lonely place. Technology that was supposed to bring us together often drives us apart and alienates us from those around us. Tackling this challenge, our next two speakers call for new forms of connection and solidarity. It's great to see such a full room for this talk, and I'd love you all to give a warm welcome to renowned physician and author of the best-selling book, The Myth of Normal: Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture, Dr. Gabor Maté. And the most prolific political streamer on Twitch, Hasan Piker.
Wow, what a crowd. They're all here to see you, and I'm just honored to be on the stage with you, if we're being real. I've wanted to have a conversation with you for quite a while, and I'm glad that we got to do it in your hometown in Vancouver, beautiful Vancouver.
In a very intimate setting.
Very intimate setting, yes, yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
So I don't know how this is supposed to be. I guess it's going to be a back and forth, right?
Yeah.
In a regular conversation. Last time I did one of these, I had a journalist who was like asking me questions about what I do.
Yeah.
But given that I'm the media figure and you're the prolific author and academic, I will ask you some questions instead. Hopefully that's okay.
Let's see how it goes.
All right. So let's start with somewhat of a cliche,
yeah.
A question that you've probably answered a million times over your career.
Yeah.
How do you define trauma?
Sure. So trauma literally means a wound. That's the Greek word for wound or wounding. So trauma is a wound that hasn't healed. So it's really important to understand that trauma is not what happened to you. Trauma is what happened inside you as a result of what happened to you. So if I sustain a blow to my head, that's not the trauma. That's the traumatic event. The trauma is if I develop a concussion. So trauma is a wound that hasn't healed. And of course, that can happen physically or psychologically. In fact, you can't separate the two.
Yeah, you've talked about the distinction or the root of the word trauma. Do you want to talk about how it's evolved from being understood as something that is often physical to how it manifests in the body and in the psyche?
Well, again, Western medicine makes the unscientific mistake of separating mind from the body. So they'll think of psychological trauma or physiological trauma as being different. But I can tell you a number of things. I can tell you that, for example, women with severe post-traumatic stress disorder have double the risk of ovarian cancer. In other words, the trauma shows up not just as a set of psychological disturbances, but as disturbed physiology in the body. American black women, the more experiences of racism they have to endure, the greater the risk for asthma. So trauma actually causes inflammation and narrowing of the airways. I could go on. Canadian study, men who were sexually abused in childhood have tripled the rate of heart disease, regardless of whether they smoke or drink or not. So that, again, the trauma psychologically that they endured translates into physiological effects. Not to mention, we're just 10-minute taxi ride or 5-minute taxi ride away from Vancouver's downtown east side. We're talking in Vancouver here. This is North America's most concentrated area of drug use. It's a severely addicted area. People are injecting and dying in the streets, just a few blocks away. And I worked there for 12 years. In the 12 years that I worked down there, I didn't have a single female patient who had not been sexually abused as a child. So trauma shows up in all kinds of ways. Mental health conditions, addictions, physical illness, of course, troubled relationships, shame about who you are, shame about the self, and loneliness.
So I do want to talk to you about loneliness.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, we talk about the individual,
Yeah.
but how do you account for the systemic forces that accelerate the trauma that people are experiencing, oftentimes born out of systemic racism, white supremacy, things I've heard you talk about in the past, genocides that are unfolding around the world, numerous crises taking place, and how atomized we feel as a byproduct of the current capitalist mode of production that we exist under. Do you feel like this is a heavy contribution?
Well, it's actually inextricable. Human beings are by nature what has been called biopsychosocial creatures. In other words, our biology is inseparable from our emotional states, which is inseparable from our social relationships. When I mentioned that women with severe PTSD have double the risk of ovarian cancer, nobody develops PTSD sitting in a room by themselves. Something happened. So that when you understand individuals, you have to understand the whole social culture that generates that individual's life experiences. And a system which atomizes people, which sets people against each other, which teaches us that human nature is by definition selfish, aggressive, individualistic, greedy, acquisitive, and suspicious, that's going to separate people from each other. Now that view of human nature has nothing to do with real human experience. It has to do with the dominant view of a particular social system. But that will generate a lot of isolation, loneliness, and stress. So that you can, in North America, indigenous tradition, there's the medicine wheel, in which has 4 quadrants: the physical, the mental, which means emotions and thoughts, the social, which is our relationship with other creatures, and the spiritual, which is our creation with the whole universe. And rest means a balance, so I should say health means a balance in all those 4 quadrants. Now, that's not a mystical, naive, primitive way. That's actually what science has shown. So that the physiology is inseparable from our psychology, from our social relationships. So individual health very much reflects social circumstances. And in Canada, where we're speaking right now, indigenous women never used to have rheumatoid arthritis. Now, today, in Canada, an indigenous woman has 6 times the rate of rheumatoid arthritis than a Caucasian male. That's got nothing to do with gender or race. It's got to do with social structure, racism, and historical trauma.
Do you feel like it's almost spiritually like smallpox being brought in blankets, but this time, instead of the direct disease and its contribution, it's the systemic forces of capitalism, imperialism, colonial violence, and its remnants that are redefining the way that people who have been subjected to this kind of systemic violence are experiencing negative consequences?
Well, it's interesting how you frame it, because there's a concept, I think it's a Lakota word, but it's an indigenous Native American term called Wetiko, W-E-T-I-K-O. It refers to the spirit of selfishness and aggression and exploitation. And the indigenous people saw the white people as carrying that spirit. It's almost like a virus that infects you. That's exactly what they mean.
So aside from the structural forms of inequality being reinforced, it's obvious that during COVID, our society felt even more isolated than ever before. We've seen a generational breakdown between older Gen Z and younger Gen Z, depending on which mode of socialization that they were going through, and the impact of that has been very obvious. We saw a lot of younger Gen Z fall victim to right-wing radicalization on the internet, and even some of the older Gen Z as well. How do you feel like, how much of that is born out of loneliness and isolation and the trauma that it creates? and is there a way to solve that problem?
Well, first of all, it's interesting because with each new generation, the ratio of loneliness increases. And that's been going on for about 40 years. And that's been studied. So the people that define themselves as lonely, the numbers are going up and up and up. Now, when you're lonely, you're desperate. See, the thing about human beings is that we're not blank slates on which you can just write anything you want. We're products of evolution, just like other animals. And if you look at human evolution, there's been human or hominids on Earth for millions of years, human-like creatures. Our own species, Homo sapiens, we've been here 150, 200,000 years. Now, if you picture evolution on the face of my watch, and if 1 hour is evolution, then until 3 minutes ago, we lived in small band hunter-gatherer groups, totally connected to each other. The whole group went everywhere together. Children were raised by the whole clan, extended family, uncles, aunts, neighbors. There was no separation. And communality, collaboration, and connection were absolutely essential for survival. And so we evolved expecting those. That's part of our nature. So any society then that increases people's isolation actually tramples on essential human needs. And this society, especially under the neoliberal dispensation, loneliness has been increasing to the point now, and that's not just a isolated emotional travail. What it actually is it undermines physiology, so that loneliness is as much of a risk factor for early death and illness as smoking or obesity, even more so. So it has physiological impacts. And it's just getting worse and worse with each generation.
How do you think we fix it without rolling back the clock to primitive communism?
Yeah. Well, nobody can, we can never go back. I mean, we're not going to be hunter-gatherers again, you know, which is a good thing for me, because if I did, I would starve to death, you know, given my particular ineptness at doing anything. But we can be aware of what we've lost. And we can see, well, given today's technology, given today's knowledge, given today's circumstances, how can we get back what we lost? How can we recreate structures, connections, interactions that promote togetherness rather than isolation? So, you know what? There's a bunch of techies in this room, I think for the most part, and the human mind is an incredible creative template. What if we actually put our attention and our intention at recreating communality, you know, given today's circumstances? We could do it if that was an intention. It's interesting because in Britain, it was so bad they appointed a minister for loneliness. That's how bad it is. So we could.
Doesn't seem to be working.
Sorry?
Is it working?
I don't know who is. Yeah, but so you know what I'm saying is, if we recognize it as a problem, we could deal with it. But we have to recognize it.
Yeah. This is something that I experienced personally during COVID.
Yeah.
I went independent in the end of 2019. I left my job at the Young Turks, and I decided to take a gamble and go on my own and become a Twitch streamer. And I was going to follow Bernie Sanders around. And I did. Mm-hmm. And then COVID happened. Mm-hmm. And then Super Tuesday happened. And then, you know, unfortunately...
Tell me what Super Tuesday was.
Super Tuesday was when Joe Biden won all of the states that he didn't even go to. The Democrats cheated.
Yeah.
And they stopped Bernie Sanders.
That's right.
It was devastating. One of the worst moments of my life still to this day.
Really?
But thank you for clapping for that. Yes.
So you were disillusioned, were you?
Well, I was disillusioned.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this.
Are you gonna? Oh no!
Well,
Uh-oh. This is what I was worried about. I watched you talk to Hasan Minhaj, and I was really worried you were gonna start tugging on some things.
well, I'm only asking a simple question.
Okay.
Would you rather be illusioned or disillusioned?
I would rather be illusioned.
You'd rather be illusioned.
No, well, sometimes it's good.
You'd rather believe in fairy tales, is that right?
Yes, but here's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'd rather hold out. I'd rather hold on to hope
Well,
and have a North Star that I'm working towards.
but would you rather have that hope based on reality or based on a fantasy?
True, based in reality, of course.
Okay, well then it's a good thing to be disillusioned.
Okay.
And you were disappointed by Super Tuesday. I wasn't. I never expected anything otherwise. I expected the Democrats to be Democrats.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well,
but go on.
but see, this is why I say it's good to be a little bit illusioned, though, because I still maintain this perhaps silly naivete, this optimism that there is some changes that we can make within the party system, which is why I'm now working to elect in the primary system as many left-flank candidates as possible. I am not optimistic that entryism as a strategy is going to actually work, and all of a sudden, in bourgeois, capitalist, neoliberal democracy, one of the two major parties is going to turn into a communist party by any means. But I think it's important to advance the contradictions, not necessarily advance the contradictions personally, but at least advance class consciousness.
Well, look, so I suppose we could debate politics here, and I'm holding this book here, Meta-Normal, which is my most recent book, and I talk about this question. And it was Ralph Nader, I think, who said that you can have your choice between Tweedledum or Tweedledee. It's a question of which one. Do you want Tweedledee? You want vote Democrat. You want Tweedledum? Vote dumb. Vote Republican. You know, but I don't particularly believe that this system is amenable to party reform, and you know it's not. But look, if you believe in it, and if you want to work for it and put your energies into it, as long as your eyes are open, good for you.
Yeah.
You know, and I just more power to you. Do it, but then be ready to draw the proper conclusions based on what happens.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The primary purpose that I think I see with the way that the primary system works is to advance class consciousness, to elect people like Zoran that will show that there's a different path that you can chart, even with the significant setbacks oftentimes afforded by powerful interests, capitalist class, and even in many instances the party itself, the Democratic Party itself. So I guess I'm not disillusioned,
Okay.
or I guess I'm not illusioned, rather, in my idea that, like, you know, this is going to magically turn everything.
Time will tell. I met Zoran once, and I was quite impressed with him as a person, and I even asked him, I said, there's lots of people with idealism who gain some position within the system, but then they get kind of metabolized and digested by the system. And what are you going to do to keep you from that happening to you? And he gave a very impressive answer. He said, first of all, he has to keep close to the people that elected him, not to the power structure.
That's a good politician answer.
Yeah, and secondly, I have to look in the mirror every day and ask myself, am I being true to myself? So whether he'll do that, time will tell. He's a very promising figure. Whether the system, and to what degree the system will let him make actual reforms, time will tell.
Yeah. I want to go back to the COVID era, though, because I made the mistake of saying I was illusioned, or became disillusioned. But the reason why I brought that up is because it was an unprecedented amount of loneliness that people were experiencing, and they were looking desperately to online communities. Now, one of the things that I have personally encountered in the aftermath of this was that there were a lot of reactionary communities that formed, as well as communities like myself, the one that I created, with a very specific purpose to try to get people to go and organize in their communities and organize in their workforces and form labor unions, have a crumb of autonomy or a crumb of control in their own lives. I feel like that's a very powerful way to...
Did you say a crumb?
A crumb, yes.
Oh, that's a very accurate way of putting it.
Yeah.
Look at your own language.
You think it's too negative of a framing?
No, I'm saying it's realistic.
Yeah.
A crumb is very little. That's exactly what you get.
Yeah.
Because
but little by little,
because the actual control.
Yeah.
Like if you actually look at who controls things and how many people. I mean, what is the statistics? 0.1% of the world's population own more than 50% of the world's population.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get crumbs.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tremendous system of inequality. It's designed this way, and it's very sophisticated in its design, especially the way propaganda works, that makes a lot of people feel comfortable and sedated, and not acknowledge the tremendous consolidation of power and the hardships that they go through. And then you have one flank, the reactionary forces, fascists, that will take advantage of that angst, that animosity, and try to harness all of that anger into organized violence in many instances, and also stochastic terror. I wanted to ask you about this in particular. How much do you think that isolation has contributed to increased acts of random instances of violence that's taking place all around the world now, as a matter of fact, even in places where they previously had no school shootings?
Well, first of all, just in terms of what you said about propaganda, James Baldwin, the great American writer, he said that words in this country are used more to cover the sleeper than to wake him up.
Yeah.
So there's a tremendously sophisticated propaganda system, and I grew up in Eastern Europe under communism, where there was a very crude propaganda system that everybody could see through. It's much more clever here. It's just as pernicious and as controlling, but it's far more insidious and less easy to see. Now, in terms of the question about, there was a terrible school shooting here in British Columbia a couple of months ago. 8 children were killed by somebody who was clearly mentally ill, somebody who the mental health system had clearly failed. And when you look at these people that commit these shootings, they're usually very lonely, troubled individuals who have festered in their own isolated little world, usually because of trauma, and with tremendous resentment and anger and frustration towards the world, which then they express through their horrific acts, so that the increasing isolation certainly feeds that. Because again, given that we have this need for connection, we actually are, we have brains that are wired for all these different emotions, and one of them is love. We're actually wired for love. Well, when that's blocked, there's a tremendous frustration. And these school shooters or these people who commit violence are always people. Something happened, and that isolated them, that hurt them, and then gave them tremendous frustration.
So one of the things I've identified as a possible solution that I want to run by you is, like I said, organizing and trying to be more ever-present in the communities that we exist in the real world. Because I feel like increasingly in this age of isolation, we find ourselves desperately seeking out a sense of kinship, a sense of community, a sense of shared purpose, and oftentimes we find that on the internet.
And just as you mentioned earlier, these various right-wing groups, they do give people a sense of belonging, and they do give people a sense of shared understanding, and they give people a sense of meaning and purpose, and that's powerful.
Yeah. And I guess the question I have is, how do you combat the ease of access and the immediate gratification that these right-wing spaces offer? One of these spaces is called the manosphere. I was once a young man. I'm 34 now. In my industry,
over the hill.
Yeah, over the hill.
Yeah.
1 foot in the grave. And I remember feeling emotional, feeling worried about my future.
Yeah.
I remember the complexities in interpersonal relationships.
Yes.
That seeking after or seeking the love of a crush that I had in high school, and and how terrified I was to even reveal my feelings to them. Oftentimes, just never really going out and talking to them. And if I was growing up in this current media environment, I probably would have also found myself in the throes of the manosphere, because there is this alluring spell that they can they can so easily communicate to young men. The idea that it's systemic forces that are at play and that are at fault for the anxieties that they feel. Not the systemic forces of capitalism, but instead systemic forces such as feminism.
Feminism, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, something very difficult has happened to men, which is that the factory system, the corporate factory system, for all its depredations and exploitations, did give people a sense of belonging and a sense of meaning, and it gave men a sense of power, that they were the breadwinners and the protectors and the providers of their family. Now that's being hollowed out, especially in the United States, deindustrialization on a massive scale, and what has followed is what have been called the deaths of despair. High rates of suicide amongst working class men, high rates of addiction. And in the US, over the last several years, every year, twice as many people die of overdoses as died in all the years of the Vietnam, Afghan, and Iraqi wars put together. So that population is very desperate, and they lost a sense of their culturally imposed masculinity. And so they see feminism and female power as the enemy.
Yeah.
Not realizing that it's actually their ally if it's properly understood. There's something in my mind. Let me just look at my notes, because you said something that, about the fear of revealing yourself. There was a study of men who were dying of HIV some decades ago. And men who came out openly about their gayness were less likely to die of HIV than those that didn't. And amongst the ones who did die, the more fear of social rejection there was, if they did come out, the greater the risk of dying of HIV. In other words, the immune system actually responds to a sense of social rejection. So to the extent that you're afraid of being rejected, that's not just for anybody, so they suppress themselves. That's not only a psychological phenomenon, it actually plays havoc with your immune system. Again, that unity of mind and body that I keep talking about. So the dynamics that you're talking about have huge impacts on people's psychology and physiology.
Yeah, but I guess the question I have is, it's very easy to just take that angst,
Yeah.
and that angst that turns into anger,
Yeah.
and tell people that there are no solutions, and lead them down further pits of despair. It's not an accident that I think a lot of these guys who, on the one hand, will rail against sex work and will say that's all women want to do, those are the very same people that are also...
That's their fantasy.
What? That's the what?
That's their fantasy.
Yeah, but they also are many of them manage OnlyFans models as well.
Yeah.
And this contradiction is never addressed. As a matter of fact, when asked about it, I think it was Louis Theroux that had a conversation with one of these guys in his documentary on Netflix, the Manosphere documentary.
Yeah.
He asked him, he's like, well, you're talking about how women are doing OnlyFans, but you manage OnlyFans sex workers. And he was like, well, I need to make money.
Yeah.
And that's it. And he's very forthcoming about this inherent hypocrisy.
Yeah.
But it's almost not hypocritical any longer because there's a recognition that he's doing something indecent. I feel like we've seen this pattern play itself out in the realm of politics with Donald Trump. I like to say Donald Trump is the most honestly dishonest president we've ever had in America.
Yeah.
Where he wears it on his sleeve. He says, yeah, I'm a bad guy. What are you going to do about it? But I'm a bad guy that will protect my people and will attack viciously the enemy from within. Sometimes it's undocumented migrants that are falsely blamed for the problems that people are experiencing. Other times it's trans people.
Yeah.
Oftentimes very vulnerable, marginalized groups that don't have the capacity to fight back in an organized manner, that can't muster up the powerful forces that could be an important and necessary line of defense. But that's easy, right? That's an easy solution. It's not a real solution at all. It's wrong. I guess my question is, how do we fight these systemic forces, especially when these right-wing reactionary movements are not disruptive to the established hierarchy of capitalism? And in the age of dying empire, we see the same illiberal or post-liberal forces come back again in the exact same ways that we saw the political evolution that led to the rise of fascism.
Well, if you look at fascism in Germany, which is sort of the quintessential template, although fascism came from Italy, it's an Italian term, but its highest expression was Nazism in Germany. And so there's some significant similarities. Germany had an empire, it had lost it. And you talk about a dying empire, the American empire is a dying empire now. You can see that it hasn't won a war for a long time. It has caused a lot of damage, killed millions of people, but it hasn't won a single war for a long time. So it's on its way out. Empires rise and fall. There was the French, there was the British Empire, there was the Roman Empire at some point. More recently, we've had the American Empire, but the American Empire reached this apogee and started this descent much faster than any other empire in history. History speeds up as we go along. So Germany had lost an empire. The first genocide, by the way, by Germans wasn't of Jews or of Roma people, but of Africans in the Harari people in what's called non-Namibia in the early 20th century. That was the first genocide by the Germans, not by human beings. There's a book called Endless Holocausts about the American Empire. And Hitler actually consciously looked to the American model of dealing with the indigenous people as he contemplated his racial policies. So, but Germany was a very desperate country. It had lost the war. It had these onerous reparations imposed on them. Then came the Depression, and that desperation, that sense of meaning, that sense of power, that loss of dignity, that led to the power that fascism then promised and dangled in front of the German people. I've read biographies of Hitler and Trump. Characterologically, there are some significant similarities. The difference was that Hitler was an actual ideologue. He believed in stuff. Trump doesn't believe in anything. He's not an ideological fascist. He's got the character traits that fascists will have: the arbitrariness, the power, the incredible contempt for the weak, the vindictiveness, the absolute need for power, which incidentally arise from his own very traumatic childhood. One of my friends and colleagues, Bessel van der Kolk, a psychiatrist, wrote a book called But Body Keeps the Score. He says that Trump is a poster boy for trauma. And you can see that. So was Hitler, by the way. So was Stalin, for that matter. And the difference, again, is that behind or underneath or buttressing or developed by Hitler was a very coherent ideology. Totally false, but coherent. Trump doesn't have an ideology. He's an opportunist. We may say that's a good thing. Because if Trump had an ideology and his characteristics, we'd be in much deeper trouble.
Yeah. Well, we're almost about to run out of time, and they told me to make sure I keep a watchful eye on the clock.
Okay.
So one of the things that I wanted to run by you is my ideal way of trying to organize people.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have a North Star, and I think it's important to make sure that we are organizing with a purpose. Obviously, I'm a socialist, I'm an anti-imperialist, and that is my North Star for the most part, and I have seen at least some level of success trying to get people to hold on to little crumbs of hope, little crumbs of autonomy that they can secure for themselves.
I just wish you wouldn't call it crumbs.
Okay. What would you call it?
Threads.
Threads, okay. Threads of hope.
That we can weave together.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Threads of hope that we can weave together to build solidarity across the board, across the nation and across all nations, and hopefully present people with an alternative that they can subscribe to build a more egalitarian society.
Look, I salute you for that. This clearly reflects your own particular commitment and passion and sense of the world, and good for you. And I can only say, as long as people pursue their own particular authentic calling and they keep their eyes open, it's only going to lead to good. The only word that would change in your discourse is the one of hope, because it's just a technical point, but hope speaks to a wish for something to happen in the future. For me, a more useful word is possibility, because possibility is right here in the present. So the question is, what possibilities can we envision right now in the present that we can work with? Not for something to happen in the future, but something that we can actually do right now. It seems to me that's what you're up to in your particular way. And again, I can only applaud you for it. As long as you're willing to keep your eyes open and allow yourself to be disillusioned when necessary, you're not going to go wrong.
Okay. Gabor Maté, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For having this conversation.
Are we back? Are we back? Did that work? Cinema? Oh my god, we're back. Okay, these are over here.
Did you flip it? How was it? Good?
Fire writing.
We passed the audition.
Yes, you did. Really good job.
He's my cam op co-producer.
Great.
Co-owner of
Nice
the
to meet you.
podcast that we run.
Yeah.
Great.
Were you ever in Los Angeles?
Is that where you're based?
Yeah, that's where I'm based. Yeah.
I spoke there 3 weeks ago in Pasadena.
Oh, okay.
I don't have any plans to come back right now.
Okay.
How should we
I'm
manage
gonna be back in
when they're
Vancouver.
no longer just
but I would
people,
love to have
but are
another
also
conversation, like a
software?
longer one.
Oh yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what.
We don't have these time constraints.
Okay. Let me give my email address. And,
Okay, well, I can get your information from Aaron too.
Oh yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Of course you can.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's keep in touch.
All right, perfect. Lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Chat loved it.
Okay, good. I was worried.
Yeah, you did great.
I don't know if you could tell I was a little worried.
You had some weaves, but you always brought it back though.
Well, I was worried because I wanted to make sure it was like productive and I got the most out of